so I am going to make a sample board. For clients, I make sample boards out of polystyrene, okay? So if you are doing this in your home, I would highly recommend that you make a sample board so you know how to apply the product. But you could just use cheap poster board, okay? I do this because it's flexible, but it will hold the material. It won't crack in transit because my samples really get beat up along the way, taking them to and fro. So I usually just tape off a 1/2 inch border around the sample board. So that's what I'm doing. And then the next thing I'm going to do, because this is polystyrene, it's shiny, I am going to have to prime it with, I'm going to use an extreme bonding primer. So you have to use a primer that will stick. If you're using poster board, you can probably skip this step. You could go right to the base coat. But I am going to paint a coat of bonding primer on next. Okay, now my bonding primer is dry on my polystyrene. Next, I'm going to apply a base coat that's very similar to the color that I'm going to apply my plaster in, which is basically an emerald green. It's a gorgeous plaster. I've used it on a few different jobs and it just is mind-blowing. So I'm going to use a base coat of this color. It's called Cilantro. It's a Sherwin-Williams color. I'm going to apply it. You probably see me using these 4-inch rollers. We call them whiz rollers or weenie rollers. You can get the roller covers, a pack of them, very inexpensively. To be frank, we use so many of these that a lot of times they don't even get washed. They get pitched. So I try to wash them when I can, but this is a lot less expensive and less wasteful than if I used, you know, a larger roller. Okay, so that's what I'm using here. So I'm going to apply a base coat. A color this dark may take 2 coats, and it's worth the time and effort to put the 2 coats on because you want to have a nice solid base coat because the plaster that we're going to apply is somewhat translucent, okay? We're going to put 2 coats of it on, so, you know, in theory, it becomes relatively opaque, but we don't want any of the background color even peeking through and affecting the final finish. So I'm going to make sure I have a good base coat. If we were doing a very light color of plaster, 1 coat probably would be sufficient, but because this is a darker color, I can see already it's going to take 2 coats, which is fine. So I'll dry this coat and apply a 2nd coat. Applying a 2nd coat. Okay, now I'm ready to apply my first coat of my first pass of plaster. You can see I have 3 different sizes of Japanese trowels here. I have quite a few different trowels. The first several years that I was doing troweling, I was using a trowel about this size, and as time went on, I started using a bigger one. But I guess I would say, you know, go with maybe a 6 or 7 inch trowel if you've never troweled before, or even a little bit smaller. But I'm going to use this kind of smaller trowel to do this application. The product I'm using today is Mave, which is a Metallic Plaster. This is in a green, and I'm going to put it on in 2 passes. It's very easy to work with. You just have to, like I said, put it on in 2 passes and has to dry fully in between coats. You know, you can actually add glitter to this if you want it even a little more shimmery. So this is about how much I have on my trowel. The first pass is going to be kind of skippy. You've heard me call this a DNA coat before. It goes on, I think, easier than lime-based plaster, which is has a much heavier body. So you want it to have a little bit of interest. In other words, we're not going to cover it up 100%. So when we do our next coat, some of that interest will register. I find it's actually easier to work on the wall than it is on one of these, because I have to be always aware of the edges here. But okay, let's see what the idea is. On a wall, it would be a one and done thing. I mean, this actually goes on quite fast. Okay, so I'm going to let this dry. And in real life, this is acrylic plaster. It would take overnight to dry, and you really shouldn't push that, because if this first coat is not dry, it can actually pull up. So we're going to let this dry, and I'm going to quit playing around with it. Okay, the first coat is dry. Couple things. I am going to switch to a larger trowel. This, I believe, is a 7-inch trowel. I'm just more comfortable with it. That other one is too little. I'm just in the habit of using a bigger trowel, but I think you just have to use what's comfortable for you. As I said, starting out, I started out smaller, but now I'm in the habit of using a bigger one. Also, I'm using a product, as I told you, that's called Mave. This one has it's made with a pearl base. When I started this video, I fully intended to use a product made by Proceed, the Proceed Metallic Texture with a gold base. When I got into my basement, I realized that my product was all dried out, and rightfully so, because I've used it quite a bit. It does go a long way, but I had to switch gears and switch to a different green plaster that I had on hand. And what I'll do at the end of this is I'm going to show you the difference between the 2 products. The Mave, which has less flash, and a lot of people like that. Some people, you know, just are not real big into a lot of flash. I personally am, but what matters most is my client, of course. Versus Proceed Metallic Texture, especially in a gold base and a copper base, has a lot of flash. And like I said, I'll show you the difference at the end. So now I'm going to apply my second coat. This one, I'm going to apply a little bit tighter, and I'm going to do 100% coverage. Okay, so I'm going to pull it a little bit harder than I did the last time, and I'm going to cover it 100%. This coat tends to go pretty fast, because you've already, you know, spent a little extra time getting the DNA coat on and making it look like a random pattern. So that's already all taken care of. Now it's just filling in, okay? And again, on a wall, this happens very fast. So maybe in a room that would take a few hours to get the first coat on, to get the second coat on may take only an hour. So I don't know if that's gonna help you with reference, but okay, so we're gonna let this dry and then I'm gonna show you the final product. Okay, so here's our final product. This is 2 coats of Metallic Plaster. It's an acrylic plaster, okay? And can you kind of see the shimmer? It's a beautiful plaster. Now this, as I told you, doesn't have quite as much shimmer as some other ones. Some people like this almost like a matte metallic. And then here is, in comparison, this one is Proceed Metallic Texture, which has a lot more flash. But it certainly is just a personal preference. Okay? So enjoy, have fun, and let me know if you have any questions about this process.